Welcome to the Deep Dive. And you sent us a really fascinating stack of sources this week. I mean, it's just a totally candid, kind of chaotic look at everything from current events to career changes and even some deep-cut pop culture nostalgia.
Oh, it's a great mix, really compelling one. We're basically navigating everything from, high-stakes political drama and these big questions about institutional trust, all the way down to the ephemeral nature of fame. It's all woven together. And our goal here, as always, is to just pull out those aha moments for you, the key takeaways, and just do it quickly so you walk away really informed.
Okay, so let's start with that chaotic world of national politics, because your sources had some really pointed, unfiltered commentary on shifting loyalties and money. We have to begin with all the drama around Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Let's unpack this political U-turn. Her sudden shift, which the sources highlight, was kind of captured by this symbolic reference to the song Devil Woman. She's announcing she's quitting Congress. But the material gives us two completely different, conflicting explanations for why.
And that tension is where the real insight is, I think. On one side, you've got this intensely skeptical view, and it's all rooted in her finances. The sources are basically saying she's corrupt and this is all a calculation.
Exactly.
They point out she entered Congress in, 2021 with a net worth of about $700,000.
And now, just 4 years later, she's reportedly worth $25 million.
$25 million? That financial context is everything.
It is this rapid wealth accumulation, it just blows past her congressional salary. It's what fuels that theory that her actions are purely transactional.
So the idea is she only resigned after she could secure a pension. It's just a business decision.
A very profitable one, yeah.
But then there's the other view, the pragmatic one. And this one is fascinating because it forces you to really think about truth. She's now publicly saying things about Donald Trump that are factually correct, calling him a liar, a traitor, for suggesting she betrayed him.
Which raises this profound question, right? If the goal is a healthy political system, shouldn't we want people, regardless of who they are, to come to their senses and speak verifiable truths?
It's a real challenge.
It forces you to confront this. Can you really separate the message from the messenger, especially when that messenger has reeked in millions while in office?
Exactly. When someone you previously despised suddenly speaks a clear truth, what are you supposed to do with that? And the speculation on her endgame is all over the place. Is she running for president? The Senate?
Well, one source suggested she'd avoid the Senate because she'd need Trump's endorsement.
Or is she just retiring? Genuinely heartbroken that she believed, as the source put it, all the bull.
It really speaks to a massive crisis of institutional trust. It suggests that, for her at least, the very foundation of her political belief just fractured.
And speaking of carefully navigated political situations, let's move from MTG to Mayor-elect Zoran Mandani. Specifically, his highly anticipated meeting with President Trump, who had famously mocked him as my little communist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the pundits, according to your sources, they predicted this encounter almost perfectly.
They did.
They said Trump would be cool, complimentary during the meeting, say they got along great, and then, inevitably trash him later on.
But the real insight here wasn't Trump being predictable. It was Mandani's performance.
Absolutely. Mandani was incredibly skillful. He just stood there. He maintained this, stoic but smiling presence.
Made sure not to show agreement.
Right.
None of that political head nodding you always see. But he also wasn't combative.
Exactly. His goal wasn't to win the room. It was to win the narrative outside the room.
By denying Trump the fight the media wanted, he projected competence, control.
He appeared presidential in a situation that was designed to humiliate him. That's high-level political skill, not just performance art.
Okay, moving quickly through a couple of news quiz nuggets that tie right into this. The Epstein Files Transparency Act passed the House. The vote was 427 to 1.
1. And that lone holdout, Republican lawmaker Clay Higgins, was described in the sources with some pretty stark language.
Yeah, they said he was a really, really bad person who should be punched in the face.
The implication is pretty clear, right? In an act designed for transparency on a deeply sensitive issue, a single vote against it just raises huge red flags.
And another detail, former cabinet member Larry Summers, who served under Bill Clinton, is stepping down. His ties to Jeffrey Epstein were revealed in those emails.
So these files just continue to have ripple effects at the highest levels of power.
They do.
So that covers the high-stakes world of national politics. But the sources also show us that chaos thrives on a much smaller scale, too.
Let's shift gears. Let's talk about this time capsule from the Kansas City stand-up comedy scene in the early 2000s.
This is a deep dive into some hyper-regional nostalgia, specifically open mic nights at a place called Stamford and Sons.
Right. So the sources recall how the host and a friend, Paul, started doing open mics around 2001, which sets the stage for this legendary story about a comedian named Kyle.
And this story, it just reveals the complete lack of boundaries and the sheer absurdity of that scene. It's the kind of thing that perfectly explains why people burn out of comedy.
It really is unforgettable. So Kyle, on his way to the gig, finds roadkill on the side of the road. A possum.
A real, dead, decaying possum. And instead of, leaving it there...
He puts it in a cooler. And brings it on stage.
As part of some kind of, animal trainer act he'd cooked up, but the payoff is what made it legendary.
The sources confirm this. He tried to revive it with a vacuum cleaner.
I still can't believe this is a true story.
He sticks the hose down the possum's mouth to, suck out the death, whatever he thought that was.
Oh, no.
And then he dramatically blows the putrid, corpse-scented exhaust into the entire comedy room.
So you can imagine how that went over.
Yeah, the whole venue had to be evacuated.
And
Kyle was banned for life from Stamford and Sons.
That level of commitment to a joke, however insane, it just tells you everything about the desperate drive and the instability of that whole environment.
So fast forward to today. There was a recent reunion show, and the sources mentioned the famous comedians who actually broke out of that scene, like David Nast from Star Search and Nikki Glaser.
And there's this weird little detail about a poorly written $30 book by that same Kyle about the open mic history. Everything becomes history eventually.
But the shared reflection from the host to his friend was that they felt like the Forrest Gump of comedy.
They were just there, right? Observing all these rising stars, all the chaos, but never quite becoming the main characters.
And the insight they pulled from that is that they credit their survival to avoiding that lifestyle.
Right. They weren't drug addicts. They had day jobs. They were observers who managed to avoid the traps while watching everyone else explode or burn out.
And in the process, they named some names. Comedians from back then who were allegedly dicks. Chris Porter, Joe Corolla, D.C. Young.
Sounds like a lot of raw talent and a lot of raw attitude. Only a few found a way to make it stable.
Speaking of things that burn brightly and then just disappear, let's pivot hard into pop culture. Let's get into the two-hit wonder game.
This is such a brilliant concept for understanding cultural memory. The core question is simple. What was the second, often totally forgotten, song by an artist who is famous for one massive culture-defining hit?
It's a great test, so let's run through the examples you provided. First up, Ram Jam. Everyone knows Black Betty.
Of course, but the second lesser-known track was Keep Your Hands on the Wheel.
Never heard of it.
And the sources noted it sounded, well, a lot like Black Betty.
Ah, okay, so that's one theory. If your follow-up is too similar, the audience just sort of files it as a repetition, not something new, and it just fades away.
Right, it doesn't register. Now let's look at the counter theory with Toni Basil.
Famous hit, Mickey. Unmistakable.
Her second track, though, was described as a very synthy, generic 80s track.
So it sounded nothing like Mickey.
Almost nothing. There was a brief cadence similarity, but that's it. So here, the failure wasn't repetition. It was genre betrayal. The audience punishes you for shifting your sound too drastically.
That makes sense. Okay, next. Classic is Take On Me.
The forgotten second track was The Sun Always Shines on TV, which was just noted for being very 80s. A bit better known, maybe, but still a ghost compared to the main hit.
Then there's Pilot. Their big hit, Magic, is still played everywhere.
Everywhere, constantly. But their second song, which had a very distinct choir sound, is completely unrecognizable. It's just stark evidence of how hard it is to capture that lightning in a bottle twice.
And finally, the ultimate example, Starland Vocal Band.
The hit, of course, Afternoon Delight.
Their second hit also had that 70s choir sound. But the amazing thing the sources point out is that while the song is one of the biggest of the decade, the band's name is virtually unknown.
It's an incredible illustration of how a single piece of art can just completely eclipse the creators. The artist becomes an anonymous vessel for the hit. Fame is fragile.
And cultural memory is very, very selective. Okay, speaking of high impact and new identities, let's transition to the personal updates, starting with the host speaker's new policy job.
Right, so the new role is Chief Policy Officer for Jackson County, Missouri. The job is basically looking at policies that impact the county and working on special projects to help get things up and running better.
A fixer, essentially.
Which is a huge trend in local government, right?
Yeah.
The need for dedicated people to cut through the red tape.
Then he's already getting some nicknames. The Cleaner.
And jokingly, the Stephen Miller of Jackson County.
Which, to be clear for you listening, the sources frame that as a joke about being an aggressive political operator, a fixer, not an endorsement of the original Stephen Miller's ideology.
Exactly. It's about the function of the job.
He's also heading to the Lake of the Ozarks for a conference. I love this detail about frugality. He's staying at the Red Roof Inn because the Margaritaville resort was sold out.
Respecting the taxpayer dime. Love to see it.
Let's move to a different kind of high-impact challenge. Jane's 53rd birthday. She went rock climbing.
At a place called ROKC. And it presented this really significant psychological hurdle.
Yeah, the sources emphasized that the climbing was hard, but the real difficulty was at the top of the wall, 25, 30 feet up.
And having to trust the automatic auto-belay system.
To just let go, kick out, and trust this machine to catch your free fall.
That moment challenges your deepest survival instincts. It's not about muscle, it's about trust. It's a profound exercise in trusting an external system.
Which, ironically, brings us right back to the institutional trust we talked about in politics.
It's the same core challenge, just on a personal scale.
Well, she conquered it. And afterward, they had this amazing surprise 4-course chef's dinner with drink pairings. The chefs are opening a place called Loretta Jean's soon.
Sounds incredible. And a few final quick updates. Paul officially became a notary. His joke is that now he's always working.
And Brian is prepping to be an expert witness in a construction trial down in Cass County. And he's building a screened-in porch on his own house.
And finally, Paul had a wild travel update. He saw The Wizard of Oz at the Sphere in Las Vegas.
Said it costs $175 a seat, but that you felt fully engulfed.
But also that beers were $18 and there's a definite risk of motion sickness. So, be warned.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've gone from political maneuvering and cultural memory to personal challenges and policy fixes.
So what's the final takeaway?
I think the sources, as diverse as they are, all point to the volatility of trust and recognition. Nothing is static.
Whether it's a comedian's career burning out or a politician's wealth exploding overnight, everything demands that we constantly reassess what we believe and who we follow.
Which brings us back full circle to MTG and that crisis of credibility. So here's the thought we want to leave you with. When you have someone who's previously defined by, questionable actions and extreme views, and they suddenly start speaking a clear, verifiable truth, is the hardest thing for us, for the public, to separate that message from the messenger.
What does it truly take for us as critical thinkers to prioritize a verifiable fact over the source of that information, even if it comes from the metaphorical devil woman?
That's your provocative thought for the week.
Indeed. We look forward to hearing what knowledge you send our way next.